Hi, it's Victor Perton here at the Centre for Optimism, and welcome to the Optimist Heart, the beautiful creation of Caroline Ward that inspires me every week. And it could be no more inspiring today with Gonzalo, who is a United Nations high-level representative. He's an inspiration from the private sector, the circular economy. It's just fantastic to have you. So welcome, Gonzalo, from your winery in Chile.
Hi, Victor, Caroline, and everybody that is watching today. Great to be here with the two of you and all of you, but mostly great to be here to speak about optimism, because there's a lot, there are so many reasons why to be optimistic, but at the same time, we have to increase our optimism for what I expect to be a fantastic 2021. So I'm sure that we can get a lot out of this conversation in terms of how do we contribute for the optimism that we require for 2021 to be that year that will change many, let's say, bad trajectories toward the ones that will take us forward to the sustainable development that we require.
Fantastic. And as I said to everyone, these orange glasses, which match my jacket, come from an Australian startup that produces the frames from recycled plastic. So I'm in the circular economy as well. And Caroline, welcome to you. It is, I think, 40 degrees where you are. And in Melbourne, it's 18 degrees and cold and wet.
Well, maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. That would be pleasant.
So, before we turn to our general conversation, as everyone knows, at the Centre for Optimism, the first question we always ask is, what makes you optimistic? And in preparing for today, I just remember Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand saying that in climate change, it's too easy to be pessimistic and to be ground down in inactivity. You know, you have to be action-orientated and optimistic. And Gonzalo, I've already shared some of your thoughts with our listeners. Tell us what makes you optimistic in general and optimistic about what you're doing on climate change.
Great. Probably part of what makes me optimistic about climate action is things that are not that visible to even some people related to climate action. And that's part of what makes me optimistic, because we are having a capability of mobilizing in a way that sometimes they said it's not necessarily, what is in the center of the discussion. And why am I referring to this? Because most of the time we're mostly concerned about what nations are doing, or what nations should do more, or what nation should be capable of doing, and how we are on their hands for them to let us know what is the world that we require. What happened is that in the last 5 years, we've set an expectation that is the fulfillment of the Paris Agreement, but only 2 years ago, I would say 2 years and 1 month, we have a very concrete indication from science telling us that even the Paris Agreement is not taking us to the needed and desirable future. Is the IPCC report embedded into the process, so absolutely related to the role of the nation, that is signalizing what to do. And what we have to do is quite simple. Of course, it's sometimes even simple things seem to be hard to achieve. We have to be net zero by 2050, the latest. What does it mean? That each of us, not only at the national level, at the individual level, at the organizational level, business level, city level, we require to start measuring our emissions and contributing to reducing the emissions and contributing to incrementing the capacity of nature to sequestering that carbon. Only 1 year ago, a little bit more, we launched an initiative putting together everybody that was understanding that and was willing to follow that indication from science. We created a coalition called the Climate Ambition Alliance, putting together nations, but also non-party stakeholders, meaning, as I said, cities, major regions like the states in Australia, investors, universities, schools, all of them together working to be net zero by 2050, of course, with a very credible mechanism. What happened now, and probably this is something that is not necessarily visible for the whole society, because we have created in a very complementary way to everything that sometimes takes our minds. We have more than 60% of the global GDP, more than 1/3 of the global population, all committed to net zero by 2050, the latest. And of course, with the election of President-elect Biden, the United States will join, as he has declared in January. And with that, believe me, that's a domino effect that will have the capacity of showing now how the leaders of the world are now showing a concrete trajectory that is absolutely inevitable. It's absolutely, you can't avoid it. It's absolutely feasible, credible, and you're seeing actually many leaders around the world saying, as we are, let's get to zero. We can get to zero, and that shows that trajectory shows so many amazing possibilities. So 1 year ago, we were probably quite worried about the future. Now we can see that future as something that is not only feasible, but is something in which we can get related personally. So that makes me be a lot of optimistic, realistic in terms that there's a lot of job to be done, but the change on trajectory that we have seen in 1 year is amazing. It's beautiful. It's possible.
Wow.
That is brilliant. And I love the way you bring it back to the person. Whenever I do a lecture anywhere, I tell people to take red lipstick and write on their mirror, the leader looks like the person in my mirror. So we can't just leave it to Biden. It's to each and every one of us. And speaking of great leaders, Caroline, can I throw to you?
Thank you very much, Vic. Well, Gonzalo, I'm going to now invite you, because this is the Optimist Heart. So we got inspired by your inspiration and the whole idea that indeed we're at a time when things have to change. They have to, and what you're sharing, what you just shared is that they are. So that's great. But I want to track back a bit and let's go a bit about you. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up in Chile, because I want to draw some threads as to how you ended up. In one of my posts, I said almost from when he could walk, he was a social entrepreneur. So, who are you?
Thank you, Caroline. And I know that's not even a tricky question. That's a very directed question, because that takes me to a great friend of you, my mother. Yeah. And both my parents taught the three siblings with a very concrete idea on letting us be whatever we want, but really recognizing that we have received so many privileges in our life, as probably many of the people that are now watching have done so. I'm not part of the whatever aristocracy or anything. It's a normal life, but with so many possibilities in terms of education, health, access to culture, knowledge, connections. That means that we have been educated to do our best effort on leaving the world better than how it was when we came here. And you can do that in so many ways. And I mean, they open us so many possibilities. My mother showed us how she did it. She was a very successful business woman in the 80s. And she decided to sell her company to start what were the main roots of the civil society in Chile in the last decade of the dictatorship, and she committed her following 30-something years to run an NGO called the House of Peace, Casa de la Paz, where she created so many good things, including all of her connections with Brahma Kumaris. So that takes us also to keep on working yourself to be the best version of yourself towards not only potentially leading others, but starting by leading yourself, and therefore projecting all of that positive energy in a very concrete way. And in my case, I have the very concrete learning, as I said, mostly from my mother, but also my father. He started the first company in Chile working on microcredit in the 90s. And I learned from both of them that I mean, that you have a short period, life can be very short and very weak, and you should expend your time in things that really worth. I decided to dedicate my life to the private sector. I started working, even though I studied agronomy and then veterinary medicine. I did a master on environmental management. All of my first years of career were in the business sector, mostly in food. And all of a sudden, my youngest daughter got ill with cancer. That showed us, she was 3 years old, and that showed us how weak we are and how fragile is life. Then I lost my best friend in an accident, and I decided to start with another 2 friends a company working in circular economy to try to promote a way of life that is virtuous in terms of not only not creating harm, both at the extraction level and at the disposal level, but also be able to regenerate the environment, our society, and even some aspects of our economy that should be improved. I then had the possibility of starting the B Corp movement that is very strong also in Australia and New Zealand, first here in Latin America, and then working around the globe to promote the type of business that is committed to what we call the triple bottom line from the bylaws. And that's why probably the United Nations asked me and the Chilean government asked me to take this role as the UN high-level climate action champion that I'm carrying with a lot of pride, with a lot of thanks for the opportunity, but with a lot of responsibility in terms of using the short time that I have in order to create the most and the best possible changes.
Okay, I have a feeling someone's asked you that question before. You're very good at doing the summary. I think what's really interesting, I want to kind of take a breath and gently head backwards, because I think I came to know you more when you were setting up Sistema B, the B Corp situation, and then Triciclos. So you started in a very systematic way the whole idea of recycling. And one of the things that I found living in Chile, that due to the classist nature of the country, that often there was a disconnect with most people from things like water, for example. I would be astonished walking along Pocuro or something in one of the main streets there, and the concierge of the apartment building would be just watering the footpath, like water just running in a city that's really in 20 years will be desert. So, I think that what you did to initiate the whole thing of recycling, it was such an education, but more than education, it was a whole change. You had to enter into a whole change strategy to get people to embrace at whatever sort of class, because those who didn't have education didn't know or care about the water, and they were doing it for those who had more education but maybe more money and thought they had the right to have so much water. Didn't matter what they could do. So it was a very complex country and culture in which to integrate things of care and non-consumption. So how did you go about, what motivated you, first of all, to start the whole recycling, and how did you go about that?
Well, let me correct one very concrete element on what you're saying. It's not me. It's always a group of people.
Yeah.
I've never started anything by my own. Everything, whether it's Sistema B, whether it's Triciclos, Polcura. Now, as a high-level champion, I'm working in Nigel Topping from the UK. 2 champions, 1 team. So part of everything that has worked with me in my life is about with whom I am on the side. Even, of course, when it's about the family, it's about Tere and her leadership on setting. Tere is my wife, with the girls. So it's really understanding the importance of a team. Really important. Understanding the importance of doing things with others, with whom you can not only share a common vision and values, but with whom you can challenge together the idea. And between us, we can challenge ourselves to, again, try to reach the best version of ourselves. When it came to the first motivation that took me to start Triciclos and Sistema B, as I said, I spent 10 years as a CEO of companies packing food. And I was so connected to what it meant to put a product into the market in terms of not only putting the product, any beverage, any snack, any packed food comes with a container. So you're selling waste in so many times. And that externality in many places of the world, and of course 10 or 15 years ago, was from nobody's responsibility. At the end, not even of the municipality. It was all about just transporting that to fill a hole somewhere called a dump or a landfill. So it was so clear to me that the linear model of extracting, designing, producing, finally, or whatever, using, and then discarding was something that needed to be corrected. And that might mean, as I said, packaging or water, as you say, or CO2 emissions. All of that is related to our brutal conception of an infinite system that can be sustained in a linear way. That's so absurd. I mean, the simple math that you require to understand that is probably as simple as we try not to think about it. Well, the point here is that we live in a finite world that has so many challenges because we are the successful species, growing numbers of citizens in this finite and absolutely fragile world that requires to be lived in a different way. With that in mind, what we started doing is not only taking some materials and try to recycle them. That's fine, but it's not enough. You have to work, as you said, educating people. So many times, even though we work a lot on packaging and recycling plastic, the most efficient way to mobilize the culture of people is promoting organic recycling and composting. So go there, do some composting with worms or any other technology, but stop sending organic waste to the dumps and to the landfill. And you will immediately reduce 50% of what you are wasting, and you will be helping to promote a different type of culture that will help understand the types of waste. They come to public policy. I mean, if you are committed to the cause, if you are in love with the problem and not in love with your idea, then you should be promoting the best possible public policies and keep on working with the civil servants that help at the end set the proper framework for the whole of society. But then you have to also start working with the designers, and not only at the university level, but also at the businesses, in order for them to design better products and better business models. You have to do everything at the same time. When it comes to Chile or Latin America, you have to work with the waste pickers to dignify their role and to make them become the agents of change that they are, but increase that impact. So one of the aspects that we have done is never work in just one element or in a silo way. We have been working for 12 years to try to connect these elements that I've explained, but some others, like working at the World Economic Forum level to understand what is happening around the world, what you can bring to your country and your region. So there are so many things that you have to do in order to raise the bar sometimes a little bit, and it can come to the moment when you raise the bar a lot. Of course, we have achieved a lot of good things all the time, not only working collaboratively internally in our organization, collaboratively with other organizations, but also recognizing that you never start from zero. You're all the time standing on giant shoulders, and there's so many things that have been done, at least for the last 50, 60 years in this aspect, and recognizing the history, recognizing why we're here, what worked and what didn't work, also allows you to understand what are the best possibilities that you have to improve the situation that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I think everything, cutting in and out a bit. I just want to check with everyone. We okay with the audio because there's so much richness, yeah? Okay, everybody's catching, so that's good. Yeah, Gonzalo, I mean, so much richness in what you've just shared. And in my years of consulting, when I was working with organizations, it was the fundamental underlying problem always was the silos, everybody working in their own area and not as part of a whole, which I think what we know is that we're moving from that reductionist model that was the scientific model where you're looking only at component parts, that you now have to look at the whole. It's not enough to, we're not separate. We had a few weeks ago, and I'd love to send you this book because I think you would be blown away by it, a book called Sand Talk, and it's written by one of our indigenous academics, and he's just a brilliant mind and a great heart. And, you know, it's super clear that when you look at the patterns of the universe, everything is interconnected. And yet we live in our day-to-day as if everything is disconnected. You know, that one thing is not going to make any difference to another. And what you're talking about is this this practice of understanding that everyone is part of it. And whether it's, you know, I've seen you in forums and, you know, big summits where we pull together all parts of society to be in conversation, to learn from each other, to build bigger ideas. And so in a conversation with someone day before yesterday who can't be here today, but he's written a book called A Climate of Denial, because he cannot understand how people are in denial of the fact that, you know, there is a problem and we are having something to do with that and we can do something about it. And he said, all of the technology is available. Everything that is needed to reverse, and it's not just in the hands of governments, as Victor was saying, it's not just in the hands of business, and it is in the hands of everyone. So what do you see? You've got how much longer? You've got another year in this role, this particular role, but you know, it's not going to stop there for you. I know you'll keep going. What do you think are the key things, like for those of us who are watching here and those who will watch on demand, what are the things in the next year? I love this, that we need to do composting. That will make a huge difference. What do you see as the key things that in your role over the next year?
Well, first, as you say, I was supposed to be ending my role as high-level champion 10 days ago or so. For COP26 was supposed to be last or this month in November, and I'll be extending, or at the United Nations extending my mandate for one more year, and that's, for me, it's great because as I said, I'm working with Nigel with a very common vision, and really, I mean, we are good friends, and I think that that's an opportunity for the global climate action as a whole, but also allows us to progress probably a little bit more, or hopefully a lot more, in the programs that we are managing. We see, as you mentioned from the book, that all of the technologies are there. We don't need more and better technology. Of course, any better technology and more new technologies that appear, all the innovation will contribute a lot. Great to have it, but we don't have to expect for the technologies to appear in order to solve the problem. What do I see as elements of hope? Of course, at a political level, as I said initially, there has been a brilliant change that shows a great trajectory. We are seeing the commitments coming from the non-state actors that are increasing and are showing a lot of possibilities. Then there is all of the magic coming from citizens from all around the world, whether it's from people that are in a very absolutely unfair way receiving the impacts of the climate crisis, that are stepping up and saying no more. I mean, we need the world to turn to us and solve this. But on the other hand, we have mostly the youth of the people saying it's our future that is in the hands of the people taking this decision. We need to be incorporated in the decision, and we need the decision to be taken much, much faster.
Yeah.
All of that is creating a moment where, on one side, and in this sense, probably COVID, in the future, we will see that COVID probably helped. We have seen the energy transition accelerated in the last 12 months in a marvelous way. Of course, you still have some countries, some regions, some sectors or businesses saying, resisting, right? They're scared, they're afraid of change, they don't want to change because they don't feel that they are part of what's new and what's better. But the world has given the back to coal, has given the back to most of the fossil fuels, have accelerated the change toward renewables. Probably some of you have seen the race of green hydrogen all around the world. And if you know that technically, what does it mean? It means that we are developing in a very rapid way all the solutions that we require to change and replace diesel and gas and other fossil fuels very rapidly. So that is a sense that gives hope by its own. Then we have seen the investment sector understanding that putting the money in those old technologies, or putting the money in the sectors that are creating the harm, just doesn't make no sense. At least at the financial level, it can. Of course, it doesn't make sense at all at the moral level. But if you're only capable of detecting the financial aspect of it, you are understanding that you have to divest very rapidly and move towards the technologies and the businesses of the future. But then we're seeing, and we're entering a 2021 year that would be a year that we will remember, because biodiversity, regeneration, and food will come to the agenda very strongly, providing a lot of tools that will help us all also increment our capability of solving the crisis in terms of, again, capturing and sequestering the carbon back, restoring the diversity and the health of our soil worldwide, also incorporating the decision making up to the citizens level. So whether it's about composting your organic waste, or taking a better decision about what you take to your mouth and what you take to your plate, or if you have a capability getting much more related to where the food comes from and how you can be part of the regeneration of that ecosystem. If you integrate all of that, then it might happen that we really ramp up into an extra level, also in terms of culture, also in terms of level of consciousness, where, as I said, at least those three big pillars will help us to provide the elements of hope that also citizens of the world require.
Okay, so Gonzalo, let's unpack that a little bit, because I love this idea of, if we're composting, of what food we bring and what to our plate and what we bring to our mouth, what we do with it. Get specific about this, because that's a high level idea, but specifically, as a human, an individual, what can, if we all did these things, what I don't know what you're talking about, that would make the big hopeful difference, what would those things be in terms of food and biodiversity and back to the ecosystem?
Sure. I often say that there are two major areas of our development in which we have done it really bad twice. So imagine first fossil fuel. In many countries of the world, we have subsidized that technology, that sector, with the taxpayers' money to create, in many cases, the pollution and the greenhouse emissions that creates an extra problem that is being related, and mostly this year also, to respiratory disease, so harms us, and then we have to use the taxpayers' money again to solve our health problem. When it comes to food, we have subsidized in so many places deforestation, soy production, palm oil, beef, in a way that creates a lot of harm into the environment, not only related to the product itself, but most of the time related to how it is produced. That is also, most of those products creating a problem to our own health. We have in this moment a major problem on nutrition, whether it's malnutrition or overnutrition all around the world, and we're seeing how much of that again has to be solved using taxpayers' money. So it's so absurd. In one case, we have to move from fossil fuels to renewables rapidly. Just now, that will create also a lot of possibilities and a better situation for the taxpayers' money, but also for the health of the people. When it comes to food production, we have to start producing our food in a regenerative way. We have to start restoring nature, and we know that that will require to move a lot away from intensive farming, intensive protein production, to much more sustainable in an environmental way, much more sustainable in a healthy way, but also much more diverse. We feed ourselves with less than 200 species, where there are billions. And we require to incorporate much more of a diet that is related to a plant-based diet, even using seaweed. There are so many opportunities that we have many times set apart, because we probably have set some sort of culture in which we tend to value I would say even the lack of diversity. We are validating things that are homogeneous when we have to understand that homogeneity sometimes is totally related to diseases, and we require diversity everywhere in our plate, in our society, in our ideas, in so many different ways. It's about how do we incorporate much more diversity to everything that we do.
Okay, so I see there some beautiful vision. I can see like heaven, that's like a heaven vision. And on the way, I think that there are significant barriers to people uptaking that, including our personal, just unconscious habits. So this year's been great to put a stop where we could actually, realize how stressed we were, how unhealthy we were, or whatever. So there's many things there that this year has given us a gift of, oh, wow, I don't want to go back to feeling so crazy and stressed and unhealthy and unwell. So that's good. I think that there are a couple of things here. One is greed and high levels of fear and financial insecurity. These three things going together, how we could even begin to shift at, the levels in this country. There's still the intention to continue opening coal mines, the carbon. That's still on the government's agenda at the moment. And it's just absurd to be thinking that that's a possibility. And so there's vast amounts of greed, financial insecurity, unconsciousness, need for education. Sorry, Victor, I know this is optimism, but I'm going to go here because I want Gonzalo to answer. And one of the posts that I put the other day is that I remember when I was in my 20s, and I was kind of I was lost, and times I would felt down or dark or depressed. And in those times, my apartment was a mess. I didn't wash the dishes. I mean, I just didn't care about myself, let alone care about my immediate environment. I ate, I drank too much. It was just, and we had a conversation a few days ago with the Center for Trauma that says the whole world, that used to be a center for trauma for those returning from war. But then they realized, well, there's not that many people coming back from war now, like Vietnam, but everybody in some way or another is traumatized in many ways, whether it's domestic violence, childhood abuse, whether it's high levels of stress, of bullying, of road rage. It's an intensely traumatic world. And when we're traumatized, we disconnect from the sensitivity to even understand anyone or anything else, be compassionate to others, or have a bigger vision. So Gonzalo, I see your vision is brilliant, and I know you have to drive for that, and it's great, we can all go there. How can we bring it back so that people can start to be more sensitive and connected to this really fundamental need?
Well, I would say that there are several elements for this. Of course, there's an individual level and require to increment our capacity of, let's say, distributing the culture, the knowledge that provides the solutions that we require as a whole. That means fighting individualism, fighting grief, fighting aspects that have harmed us for quite a long time, but that have accelerated probably in the last 50 years. In order to do that, I think that it's important to recognize what brought us here. So not just say that was bad and let's punish that or block it or deny it, but recognize that there were a lot of good intentions in the efforts that took us where we are, and that just by recognizing the good intentions of those people that don't think the way we think or you think, help you provide a possibility of working with them as well. I think that that's really, really important. We have to, as I said, embrace diversity, meaning, of course, you have to embrace diversity of people that think different than you. And in this case, it's a lot about embracing the capacity of understanding the imperatives of the people that somehow set the condition for the 20th century, therefore that will allow us to set the conditions for the imperatives of the 21st century. At the same time, of course, as I think that we have crossed a point where whether we understand, I think that we crossed the point of, yes, of a system that has harmed a lot of the multilateralism, and hopefully we've reached a point where the situation in the next months and years will provide us a capacity of working around these values in a constructive way, but also putting together the needs and the idea of so many very different countries. So it's different to analyze all of this from the perspective of Australia than from Uganda or Belgium or Panama. So we have to understand again that there's no silver bullet. It's about, again, understanding the diversity of the situation that are facing all of the countries. But then there's another aspect of this that is related to the COVID, to the pandemic. somehow the situation that we have lived during this year is such a stressful situation, is so dramatic, that shows us that we are reaching limits as the ecosystem, right? Most of the things that worries us, from my perspective, are just expressions of this unique living body called the Earth, and the somehow the I would say, I'm trying to find a word in English, but the connection of the global intelligence that in many cases is saying no more, it's enough.
Yeah.
And in that sense, hopefully we won't have to be seeing so much of events like the ones that we're facing this year to understand the importance of science. Hopefully we won't be able and won't need to see events like the ones we're seeing this year to understand the importance of empathy, to understand the importance of resilience. So hopefully we can be a really intelligent species that will learn and will integrate the learnings without having to cross through with such traumatic events as the one that we're facing during this year. Just as an example, and it was mentioned in the chat, veganism is the change in nutrition habit that has grown faster ever, and it was impossible to imagine the growth of that event, and that crosscuts a lot of the aspects that we have worked and touched upon, just as one single expression of how the collective intelligence of the world is acting.
And Gonzalo, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, you said the word, we have to be fighting. And veganism is a kind of non-violent stand for this vision that you're talking about, and is very much led by a lot of young people. It's a counterculture. So it's not even we're doing this for climate change, but it's saying, you know what, this is not sustainable. It's not how we want to live. And the word regenerative came out of our conversation with our Indigenous academic Tyson. And he said, we have to stop using even sustainability, because we don't want to sustain something that we don't want to carry forward. We need to have something that's regenerative. I want to ask you a question. What's one of the most beautiful conversations that you've had in the last year that made you feel like really
I've had so many
beautiful and wow, inspired?
Always the most beautiful and the most inspired one is the last one, so it would be this one. Because it's a permanent process of learning. It's a permanent process of growing, and you have to put together everything that you brought yesterday to start preparing what is going to happen tomorrow. I'm blessed of having brilliant and beautiful conversations every day. Of course, I would say some of the ones that touch me the most are the ones that I'm having with my three daughters, as they are teaching me every day. They are my leaders, and I'm absolutely devoted to helping them, meaning they as representatives of their generation, to have a much better way of life. And meaning it's not about wealth, it's about really having a full how do you say it?
A wholehearted,
fulfilled life, right? In so many aspects. So many of the conversations that I'm having with the youth are ones that are
when Greta Thunberg arrived in Chile, even though the COP was cancelled in Chile, but she did arrive. Did you have the chance to meet with her, with Greta?
Well, we never meet in Chile. Remember, she crossed the Atlantic to New York. So we met in New York for the United Nations General Assembly. And then she was preparing her trip to Chile for attending COP25, right in the moment when COP was moved to Madrid. So we met in Madrid. We met in New York, and then we met in Madrid again. So I have the privilege to be with her and her
And the
team.
19-year-old is the one who had the cancer,
father,
right? How old is your eldest daughter, Gonzalo?
The eldest is 22,
Oh.
then the other one is 21, and the other one is 19.
So how are your daughters in relation with the whole issue of climate? Are they very conscious themselves? Are they kind of young advocates, or is it that's just dad stuff?
Well, I would say first, they are very active. My eldest daughter was also very involved in the COI 15 program. The COI 15 is the Conference of the Youth that was held last year. She's been running several initiatives and on climate, and she studied design, and most of her design is about circular economy and climate. The second one studies in the business school and is totally into B Corps. So it's all about how do you change the way business are being run worldwide, and she's doing really, really well in that sense. And the youngest studies biological, marine biology, and she's determined to save whales. So, but I would say that those are what they do. Let me tell you what they don't do. The three of them are don't eat meat. None of the three wants to drive a car and have a driver's license. For the moment, none of the three of them want to have kids. And I'm just reflecting whatever they decide to do in their lives, right? I'm not saying this is part of my pride as a parent. It's just as a reflection of how things are changing, and three major aspects in which the youth are asking themselves very hard questions. What am I taking to my mouth? How am I eating? How am I feeding myself? What does it, where that this, all of this comes from? The second one, why do I need to own a car? I mean, it's so absurd. I can mobilize myself without owning a car, not even without having a driver's license. And the third one is all the time related to what does it mean to understand that, of course, there's a lot of us, and unless we know how to manage the way to live this world in a much better way, then it's a moment to understand what does it mean, again, to come to this world. Those are very hard conversations that, of course, we're having together. I was
just saying, while you were off the air, Gonzalo, saying one of the things is that the school curriculum in Australia on climate is so excruciatingly negative that you know, some children have written to me saying they feel disempowered. And so our job as adults is to make them feel empowered.
And to do everything that is in our hands to show them that, yeah, we are committed to their future as well. Then we're not just committed to whatever we understand as success for the next 30 days. We are connected to what means success for the next 30 years, at least. And therefore, it's so reasonable that the young people are asking us to be held accountable, hopefully all the time in a very respectful way. We just closed last week the Race to Zero dialogues, where we brought a lot of young people into the sessions. And one of the things that we liked a lot, we call them the dialogues, because dialoguing is different than debating. When debating is about one winning against the other, dialoguing is about reaching a common understanding and common solutions. And we found many ways in which there was so brilliantly expressed the capacity of making the right connections between generations instead of finger pointing between generations. So I think that we as adults have a responsibility of creating the conditions for the young people to feel absolutely and be welcomed in not only the discussions, but also in the decision making, and in that sense, creating the conditions for dialoguing that will hopefully create the possibility for them to really feel optimistic, understanding that optimism in nowadays brings the need of like rolling our sleeves and doing the work, and we have to do it together.
Can I just raise, Gonzalo, I'm on the board of a water company, the second biggest water retailer in Australia, and we had a citizens jury. Young and old customers, 30 gave up 4 weekends to analyse our budget and our investment plans. And they were very happy. You know, we're going to reach net zero in that company probably by 2025, and then move on to producing green hydrogen. Food is being grown at our recycling plant. And what's interesting is when you give the citizens the power to determine the investment plans, even though they couldn't do that personally, they're very happy for their utility to do it. And what was interesting was young and old and middle-aged, all of whom had the same feeling. And it was, as you say, a jury is about consensus.
Amazing. And please, Victor, if join Race to Zero and the Climate Ambition Alliance as a company, because it's also important to collaborate with the common work that so many organizations are doing together to express that common effort to the world.
We were the first company, utility in the world to sign up to the SDGs. So all of our annual reporting is actually mapped against the SDGs. So it's a strong commitment. But anyway, I'll throw back to Caroline, and then we've got some other questions coming in from people, Caroline.
There's some questions here. Alejandro, who's Chilean, who used to work a significant role in Codelco many years ago, and now is a social entrepreneur, has established the Smart Republic platform, which is more complicated than my experience allows me to understand. But he's tuning in from Paris at the moment. So it's the middle of the night, maybe 1 in the morning over there. But he's got, hi Gonzalo, great vision. How do you see the role of education and new technologies to promote sustainable projects and scale up?
Well, hi Alejandro, great to get connected. And I would say it's absolutely crucial, and it's not only about education as a whole, but the educators, the teachers, the people that have the access to the eyes and the ears of the young people, have the capacity of aligning them very concretely with all of these values and practices and expectations. So, of course, that is absolutely fundamental when it comes to education and teachers. When it comes to the new technologies, of course, we have a huge challenge around social media, and not only social media as its own, but everything. And I mean, the way the world is changing due to technology and thanks to technology in so many ways, that represents a challenge by its own. And I really expect that we will see some sort of kind of natural selection in the system, right? As we see that in the natural species, probably this animal called the social media, or this sector called the social media will start evolving in a way that it becomes one that is on the serve of the sustainable development that we require, and not playing against it. And that will depend. I mean, when it comes to natural selection, what is not viable stops growing or stop developing. And hopefully we will be able to help that happen around the different technologies, where the ones that survives are those that are useful and capable of providing sustainable development, and not the opposite.
Thanks, Gonzalo.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Excellent reflection. Thank you.
Lovely to see your face. It's 10:30, so this is our formal close, but then we start to invite everyone up into the room for the next 20 minutes or so. There's three other questions, but Gonzalo, I have a question that I think is, for me, I would hate to, and because I'm asking questions, I get to ask this one. I'd hate to finish this conversation without having asked it. Gonzalo, how much of your time do you think you spend trying to convince those who don't see the need, and how much of your time do you spend inspiring and kind of gathering the forces across all boundaries, across all bridges, to kind of move en masse?
Well, when it comes to climate,
Yeah.
I spend almost no time. I would say not spending. I don't waste my time trying to convince somebody of this urgent need, because I'm so clear that at least people are understanding more and more that the risk and the cost of inaction is so much higher than any kind of perception of risk or cost of action. So I don't spend, neither waste my time on trying to convince. And let me be honest, I've been in the role for almost 2 years, and there have been very, very few moments in which that has been the case, of trying to convince somebody.
Bill is talking about how the Lancet and Eat.org are in the process of leading the process in Europe and the UN to move toward plant-based protein source, and the abandonment of meat-based systems that we've employed up to now.
Can I add a sentence or two for you?
Yeah, please do.
My daughter worked for Eat.org in Norway, and they have assembled an international team to promote the ideas of a plant-based system to replace the meat-based system that we have now. And they've gotten a number of nations and large cities to sign up, much in the way we were discussing earlier about, you know, the strategy of getting towns and cities and regions to sign up, as opposed to trying to get nation states to sign up, which is more challenging because of all the politics and all of the latency in trying to change those systems.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to tell you that they are quite successful, and like Paris and Barcelona and, you know, big cities are signing on. Los Angeles has signed on. So you're talking tens of millions of people at a time are signing up for this notion. And it's quite accelerated because it moves you from, the first thing they did was they hired chefs to create menus and recipes that would make the plant-based material, frankly, taste like meat. And they've been able to do it quite successfully. And so once you can't tell the difference of what you're putting in your mouth, because it tastes the same, smells the same, the texture's the same, it facilitates the transition, of course. And that's the basic idea, is to move the systems across. And the resistance you run into is monumental, though, from the existing industries. And so you have to educate your way into it. And young people are essential. They are the core of the transition. And they get it immediately, of course, and they don't have an oar in the water. They don't have a horse in the race in the way we do it now. So they're very happy to say, let's do it a new way. And that's the essence of it.
And I think, Bill, one of the things that I see that works really well is that also it's accompanied by a different kind of lifestyle. It's a more simple lifestyle. And, you know, if you're already in the race of consumerism and accumulation in life, it's hard to divest yourself. Yeah. The younger generations are going, well, we don't need that. I don't need that. I don't have to have all that stuff. I'm more mobile. I want to live more simply and more in connection with. Yeah, so I think that there are lots of kind of luminous people around these days who are very powerful in their stance. So that's really exciting. really.
Caroline, I wonder, Nathan's chopping cauliflower, but when he's ready, it'd be fantastic for him to talk about what they discovered with the utilities and circular economy. And I can see Jeremy Wright, who's online, who's leading the effort in Rotary International.
Great.
Which is an older age group than youth, but very active in climate. So, Jeremy, do you want to add something about what Rotary is doing, what you're achieving there?
Look, thank you, Victor. Rotary has taken on a 7th area of focus. Rotary's been focusing on various different things like water and sanitation, peace, education, helping underdeveloped economies and solving polio. But it's suddenly taken on climate and environment as a 7th area of focus. It's trying to make it non-political in the USA, especially with probably a Republican base of some of its members. And as you say, it's an older membership, but we're attracting younger people by taking on this contemporary issue. It's not a contemporary issue, it's a existential, crucial issue in our face, but we're moving on it, and debates like this, Victor, are most welcome, and it's terrific to hear the discussion. Thank you.
It's great, Jeremy. Thank you. I mean, that's just a wonderful thing to, especially if you say, you know, it's strong within the Republican group in the US, to go, wow, terrific. There's migration across divides. And I think that's the point that I picked up a lot from Gonzalo was saying. We have to be diverse in everything that we're looking at and seeing and listening to, and opening our hearts and minds to those who don't think like us or act like us. And so that's fantastic to see that happening. Great news. Thank you. And Nathan, can you share whilst doing your cauliflower? Are you multitaskable?
Nathan, can you tell us about your project on the circular economy?
I can. How's it going, everybody? I can multitask, but I'll be coming in and out of the camera shot. This is my chance to be a celebrity chef, I suppose, being able to talk about what I'm doing while I'm trying to prepare stuff. We've got a barbecue today, and I've been charged with putting a salad together, and I thought, with this weather that we've got, it's like, yeah, so I've just got some cumin roast cauliflower with some spinach yogurt. We're going to toss it through some French lentils, which hopefully will warm everybody up. Yeah, we had the project that we did was it was really interesting, actually, and what we found was that in order to really get the results, it was really important to get some engagement first. We see a lot of people sort of charging headfirst with technological solutions, and while they're great and fantastic and essential, it's getting people to really understand the problem and really be on board first, that it's not scary. And circular economy, the breadth of understanding of what the term means, even at a reasonably sort of a forward-thinking organisation like Yarra, we presented to our division, and people were sort of like, they don't even know what a circular economy really means. So we've got a long way to go, but we're going to centre it in optimism. We think it's the best way to try and engage people. I was really interested in that comment before about the negativity around education around climate change and how it's all doom and gloom. It's like, that's not how you engage people. Who gets on board with that? You need people you need to give them a cause. You need to give them a belief. You need to give them something to look forward to and make them, as you said before, empower them and make sure that they know that they can make a difference.
Fantastic, Nathan.
It was how Victor got me hooked on these optimism things, was that right when the pandemic hit, I was not so optimistic about how we were going to pull ourselves out of the recession that we're in now, that it was going to be a jobs and growth first kind of a thing, and that environmental concerns were just going to get tossed to the side. And the first one that I attended was the blue and green jobs, and how we're going to pull out of the recession and out of COVID normal with blue and green jobs. And it was like, okay, yeah, cool. This is awesome. It was it was great to hear that.
The company that Nathan works for, Yarra Valley Water, you know, which is a big utility, you know, 1 million people shifting a lot of sewage, a lot of water. And yet, with all of that energy usage, we will probably be net zero by 2025.
Yeah, if not earlier.
That's
The way
impressive.
things are going.
I'm sorry, yakking on, but so, and green hydrogen, for instance, one of the issues for most people producing green hydrogen is what do you do with the oxygen? Well, of course, we've got a recycling plant next to the waste to energy plant, and we've now got the community are going to be doing TAFE courses to grow food using recycled water, using the fertilizer, and of course the oxygen can be fed right back into the recycling system. So it's almost the ultimate, you know, there's poo and water in a closed system.
It gets even better. It's because the fact that at the moment with our blowers in our treatment plants, we use air, and it's really energy intensive. And the only active ingredient in the air is oxygen. So instead of pumping, we're going to reduce our energy demand of our plant by about 80% on the STP side of things. Like it's just an amazing, well, circular project that we've got going on.
There's a fantastic job of storytelling to be done there. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye. See you next week.